stop me. He couldn't take me down. And Islam, he came to your camp and he couldn't do it. So try to do it yourself. Bring that belt, bring that record, and I will see you wherever you want, my friend. All the best.
Yo, what's going on, boys? Welcome back to the Juicecast. Now, it has been a little while. I do apologize for that, but we are back, and we're officially back for UFC 330, the prediction video. So, in this video, we're going to be taking it fight from the first fight of the night all the way up until the main event, and I'm going to be giving my predictions and a short synopsis on why I feel that way. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So, the first fight of the night is going to be Jeremiah Wells versus Mitabek Orabai. Now, this is a pretty clear fight, in my opinion. Jeremiah Wells is definitely an explosive athlete, but I think he's outgunned here, both on the feet as well as, in particular, on the ground. I think in this fight, Orabai is going to go forward, shoot for takedowns, find takedowns relatively easy, and make them easier and easier as the fight does progress and as Wells starts to gas out. And eventually, he's going to find a submission on the ground. So I'm going with Orabai with a lot of confidence. Next, we have Brahimaj versus Neil Magny. Now, Brahimaj did not look good at all in his last fight, but I do think he's going to be a little bit too much for Neil Magny. Neil Magny has never been an explosive athlete. He has never had a lot of firepower, but to be honest, he's had a very good UFC career in lieu of all of that. But at a certain point in time, he's getting a little bit too old. He is 39 years old, and his opponent here in Brahimaj does have a lot of firepower. He's explosive, he's athletic, he has decent submissions on the ground. I think he's going to be a little bit too much for Neil Magny, and I think he's going to win the fight, probably via TKO. Next, we have Tobias versus Fernando. Now, these are two UFC newcomers. Can't say I'm too familiar on either one of these guys' game, but I did do a little bit of research, and based upon what I've seen, I think Tobias is just a little bit better as compared to Fernando. But that's kind of all I got for that fight. Next, we have Vicente Luque versus Tresean Gore. Now, I know a lot of people will take a look at this fight, look at Tresean Gore's record in the UFC. He had some really bad losses, but also as a professional, a 7-4 record, and say he must be a terrible fighter. That is a pretty bad professional MMA record, 7-4, which is true. But with that being said, Tresean Gore is explosive. He's a great athlete. He's getting better. And his last fight against Makhachev was the best performance of his career. And on the other hand, when you take a look at Vicente Luque, Vicente at one point in time was absolutely a great fighter. But at this point, he's up a weight class to the middleweight division, absolutely undersized at that weight class for one. But also for two, he's taken so much damage over the years. It seems like he's not able to take damage as well as he once was able to do at one point in time. And I think we're going to see that in this fight. I think Gore is going to be too explosive and athletic, land a big right hand or two, and eventually Luque is going to get dropped, curl up into a ball, and it's going to be a TKO finish for Tresean Gore in somewhat of a similar fashion to how Joaquin Buckley found his finish against Vicente Luque. Next, we have Eric Makhachev versus Dante Johnson. Now, I've said this a lot on my live streams. I'm not high on Dante Johnson. I think he's an explosive athlete. I think he's quite powerful as well, but I don't think he's a very good technical striker, or I don't think he's very good in really any aspect of MMA, but he is explosive. And in this fight versus Eric Makhachev, I think that's going to be enough to win him the fight. For Eric Makhachev, I just don't think he's UFC caliber, to be honest. If there were a matchup where his opponent would just fall back, not really push a pace, wasn't athletic, wasn't explosive, maybe he could win that sort of a matchup. But in general, Makhachev's not going to win many fights. I think he's going to get caught with a quick right hand in the first round against Dante Johnson and go out, or at the very least get TKO'd. So I'm leaning with Dante Johnson winning this fight with pretty high confidence. Next, we have Charles Johnson versus Chapelin. Now, Chapelin is also a newcomer to the UFC. Charles Johnson has absolutely been on the decline. I did not like how he looked in his last performance. It seems like his chin is starting to go a little bit. It seems like his physicality is starting to go a little bit. And because of that, I am picking Chapelin to win this fight by a decision. Next, we have Joel Alvarez versus Chidi and Jessica. Now, this is going to be a banger of a fight. Both of these guys are explosive athletes. Both of these guys are fun fighters on the feet. But I think there's a pretty big gap between Chidi and Joel Alvarez in one area, and that is the ground. On the feet, theoretically, it could be relatively close. Chidi is a pretty good striker with a lot of power. But once the fight goes to the ground, which I think it would relatively early, I think Alvarez is so much better than Chidi that he will find a first-round submission, probably relatively quick into that first round if he does indeed decide to wrestle. So I think Alvarez is going to win this fight with pretty high confidence. Next, we have Esteban Ribovic versus Edson Barbosa. Now, Ribovic is a really fun fighter, one of the more exciting fighters on the UFC's roster. But with that being said, he's not the smartest guy in the world. And if he makes mistakes against a guy like Edson Barbosa, Barbosa absolutely can capitalize on that sort of mistake. But with that being said, I think Ribovic is going to win this fight. I think the youth is on his side. I think the pressure that he does possess is going to pose a lot of issues for Edson Barbosa. Traditionally, he does not deal well with those pressure fighters. Ribovic is absolutely going to go forward, pressure Barbosa, throw it a lot of volume until eventually he finds that finish. And I think Ribovic is going to find that finish, but it's not going to be early. I think he's going to find that finish in the third round. Next, we have Mansour Abdul Malik versus Dustin Stolflutz. And this is another one of those matchups where I don't think it's going to be that close. I know Mansour did not have a great performance in his last fight versus Belgari, but Belgari is miles, light years ahead of where Stolflutz is at this point in his career. And I think Mansour's explosiveness is going to be a little bit too much for Dustin. I think he's going to be too fast, hit too hard, and eventually he is going to find that finish. He's a minus 700 favorite, which probably is a bit too wide, to be honest. I'm not that high on Mansour, even if he is going up against a guy like Stolflutz. But with that being said, I think he's going to win the fight. And as the fight does progress, the damage will be a little bit too much for Dustin, and I think Mansour will find that TKO finish. Next, we have Jalen Turner versus Kaue Fernandez. Now, this is kind of an interesting fight because the line is getting closer and closer, which is odd to me, but I'm pretty confident Jalen Turner is going to be able to win this fight. I think he has Fernandez covered really everywhere. On the ground, he has a great guillotine just in case Fernandez does look to wrestle, which he probably will not. He's not really a wrestler. But even on the feet, Jalen Turner has significantly better boxing than Fernandez. Fernandez has great kicks, especially at range, but this is not a good matchup to utilize those kicks at range. Jalen Turner is way taller, way longer than Fernandez, and he's going to be able to land shots at a range where Fernandez isn't able to. So if Fernandez's only game plan is just to throw calf kicks, it's not going to work out, because also on top of all of that, Jalen Turner has a really good ability to time up calf kicks and counter effectively off of it with a right straight or left straight as well. So at the end of the day, I think the length, technical ability, and power of Jalen Turner is going to be too much for Fernandez, and I think he's going to get the victory, probably by a TKO. Next, we have Mackenzie Dern versus Julian Robertson. Now, this is not the highest level fight in the world. I'm just going to say it right off the bat. Mackenzie Dern is not a great champion, if we're being honest, but I do think she has Robertson covered probably everywhere here. Neither one of these fighters are great strikers, but Dern at the very least has a decent amount of power, for one, but also for two, in her last fight and in some of her previous matchups, she has shown somewhat of an improvement within her striking, and I think that's going to show a bit as long as this fight stays on the feet against Robertson, but especially once the fight goes to the ground. Dern is just a lot better, in my opinion, in terms of her jiu-jitsu as compared to Robertson, and I think she finds a submission eventually in the fight. Maybe it won't happen early, but eventually I do think Mackenzie Dern wins this fight via a submission. And lastly, we have the main event, the man of the hour, Ian Garry versus Islam Makhachev. And this is a fight that I've kind of heard a lot of people go 50-50 on. A lot of people think Islam's going to win. Some people think Ian Garry is going to win. But in my opinion, I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a lot closer than the odds do suggest. But with that being said, my official pick here is going to be Islam. I think early, Ian Garry is going to do a good job at making it difficult on Islam by utilizing that movement, utilizing that elliptical kick, utilizing straight shots, jab, right straight, jab, left straight, high kicks even as well. Just putting out a lot of volume to force Islam to not be able to close distance effectively. And I think that's going to work out for Ian Garry for a large portion of this fight. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ian Garry is up 2-0 or even 3-0 going into round 4 against Islam. But the reason for why I am still picking Islam Makhachev to win this fight is because eventually I think that sort of style is going to get very tiring. We saw it for Ian Garry in one of his more recent fights against Carlos Prates, where he was having a lot of success early by utilizing movement, but eventually he got tired. And in that fight, there wasn't much wrestling at all utilized. But in this fight, Ian Garry is going to need to defend takedowns. He's going to need to move away for 5 rounds. And I think that's going to be quite grueling and quite tiring. And once we get to rounds 4 and 5, I think Islam is going to have a much better time at actually getting to Ian Garry, finding takedowns. And once the fight goes to the ground, especially against a tired Ian Garry, I think Islam is going to find that submission. So that is my official prediction for the main event. And that's kind of what I got for UFC 330. Not the best card at all on paper, but some interesting matchups, some matchups probably that will be really fun by the night of the fight. But let me know what you guys think down below. Do you guys agree with my picks? Do you disagree with my picks? But until the next time, I'll see you boys in the next one. Peace out, fellas.